We're in the province of Nova Scotia Press Gallery in Halifax, and we're joined by the Honourable Tim Houston, Premier of Nova Scotia. Thank you for having us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You brought the legislature back for a one-day sitting. First thing you did was reduce the HST by that 1% that you promised you were going to do in the. Why was it so important that you get that done right away?
Yeah, that's an important commitment. I mean, we are at a point, I think, where we can. Obviously, my first mandate was very focused on healthcare investments, and catching up on a lot of things, and obviously continue to focus on healthcare, continue to invest in infrastructure and invest in Nova Scotians, but. Lower taxes it's time for lower taxes, and that's an investment in Nova Scotians to help with affordability and just to recognize that our taxes are high. So it's important, and I was glad it's a process. We're dealing with the federal government on that as well, so we're moving along. But that was a really important step that first day to get that motion passed.
I know. Speaking of taxes, I know you're dealing with the federal government on this HST holiday break, if I can call it that we're into, and loss of revenue for the province as well as the neighboring maritime provinces. You're seeking to get that back.
It's a discussion that's happening. Obviously, the Prime Minister came out with this in the middle of our campaign, so I have had a chance to sit down and chat with him. But we know affordability is a big issue. It's on the minds of all Nova Scotians, all Canadians. So I appreciate the sentiment of what they're trying to do. But the agreement between Nova Scotia and certain provinces, but certainly Nova Scotia and the federal government, is that we consult on these things and we work together, and that they proceeded. But look, I respect the spirit of what they're trying to do, so we're on board with that. But there's a few moving parts, and we're not going to slow the tax breakdown.
You had that meeting with the Prime Minister shortly after your re-election. You said you needed that strong mandate, which you got, and then some, to be able to have a stronger negotiating position with the Prime Minister. You had that first meeting. Was that evident? Did it feel like you've got that?
I believe it was. I thought we needed a fresh, new mandate, to not have an election holding over top that might kind of taint the way they interact with me as Premier, with Nova Scotia in general. But look, it was a positive meeting, and whether or not it's as productive as I hope it was, time will tell. There was a number of issues we talked about, things we agree on, that hopefully we can get to a better place on, like the isthmus and some of these things. So, but I did think the tone was different, certainly, than the last few prior meetings I had with them, and that's a good start for sure.
And I know you've had, along with your colleagues, numerous calls and Zoom meetings and whatnot about the potential for tariffs by the new U.S. president-elect. Do you think that's a negotiating tool? Is it bluster, or is he serious? Do you think we're going to be hit with 25%?
I think he has serious concerns, and in terms of drugs and border protection and stuff. Obviously, Nova Scotians would share those concerns. So I think his concerns are serious, and I think they're probably legitimate. There is more that we can do and should do anyway. We shouldn't take the threat of a tariff war to make us act, but it's certainly got the attention. It's got my attention. It has the attention of premiers and certainly the Prime Minister and his team as well. So I'm hopeful that we can get to a better place. 25% tariff would have a real devastating effect.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about that. What kind of effect would it have? We've got Michelin plants that export virtually everything they produce, and of course, the fishery, among others, is so important.
It's like this is a significant trading partner for Nova Scotia, but for Canada, but certainly for Nova Scotia, and they're long-standing relationships. There's a lot of family ties between Nova Scotia and the United States, and traditional trading routes as well. So it's a really significant partnership. So I'm just hopeful that we'll get to a better place. But certainly with our natural resources, our berries, our fish products, lumber. There's all kinds of goods and services as well that move back and forth, and we will. I have to remain optimistic that we can get to a better place because of the long-standing.
Well, you made an interesting comment around this, that there could be, if you view it this way, an upside for Nova Scotia. The U.S. has made it very clear they want Canada to increase military spending. We build ships here. There could be something to that?
I think so. The military presence in Nova Scotia is really important. Obviously, I grew up in a military family, so I'm a little biased towards those who serve. But when you think about their presence in our province, really important to our economy. Big part of our gross domestic product here. Like it's a big part of our economy. So when we talk about increasing NATO spending, if we see some of that come into our bases that are here, we're also coastal, so we have lots of wharves and lots of shipbuilding traditions, shipbuilding happening here. So I do think that as that spending increases, we could be a beneficiary of that. I've made that pitch to the Prime Minister as well. But I think we should honor that NATO obligation, and we should be conscious of our protection of our borders and drugs and those types of things. And I think Nova Scotia is well positioned in the Federation to benefit from that spending.
The big issue, the big topic of your first mandate was healthcare, and remains so. Certainly a big election issue as well. You've had some success. You've seen the wait list numbers go down. Recently, you opened the transition facility, care facility in Bedford. You've asked Nova Scotians to be patient because it takes some time. It's a freighter you can't turn around on a dime, and I think people recognize that. How important is it going to be for you in this mandate, in this term, to really make significant changes that people can feel?
Oh, incredibly important. I mean, healthcare is on the minds of Nova Scotians. It's on my mind for sure. We are starting to see some progress. And at the time that we passed the Patient Access to Care Act, which was, deals with common sense credentialing, a doctor in the UK, good enough for the UK, good enough for Nova Scotia, nurses, these types of things. That act, not everyone in the legislature voted for that act, certainly all the PC members did, but it passed. And at the time, I said that was a really significant moment for healthcare, not only in Nova Scotia, but in the country. And now we're starting to see, that's really starting to take root. I saw a couple of stories this week where pharmacists are having some recruiting success, and certain nursing, we're seeing it. And so there's lots happening on there. The Hogan Court that you mentioned, the transitional, that patients are moving in there this week. That is a really significant moment, and there was a lot of kind of, let's call it concern and negativity. There was a lot in the media. The opposition were up in arms over this Hogan. But it's really important to the future of healthcare as we really get innovative. So now patients are going. So we're starting to see some of the things that we did start to take root, and those are really positive. We know there's more to be done, and we're committed to continuing to move the needle. But look, we're focused on what is going to work for the future.
And one of those things that you mentioned in the campaign was that 30-member travel nurse team.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about what that looks like, when we should see that on the ground?
Yeah, so bringing the travel nurse program, that's had a lot of discussion in-house. So they would be those nurses that right now work for outside companies and are in our medical facilities and supporting. And they've been really important to providing care for sure. We just couldn't have got through without them. We've needed them. But now because of things like the Patient Access to Care Act, where we're able to recruit more nurses and get them onboarded, and the nursing levels are going up, we can offer different opportunities to internal employees of the Nova Scotia Health Authority. And some people say, hey, I like that kind of travel aspect where I am moving around to different and learning different things and working in different environments. So they've had to go outside of the province to get that, outside of the provincial employment structure to get that. But now with bringing that program in-house, we'll be able to offer those opportunities to nurses. And I think that's a really important step too.
I'd like to ask you about power rates. Again, I go back to the campaign where you said you were going to make sure that power rate increases are kept to a national average. And I'm wondering how you're going to do that.
So we have the UARB is the independent body that sets the power rate. So we're going to give them some guardrails as to if there's a raise that is necessary, they'll be limited to how big that can be. So that'll be through legislation. But the power rates, we know that in what people are suffering through affordability crisis right now, that it's just one more thing, higher power rates, one more thing, bridge tolls, one more thing, parking at hospital, one more thing, right? So, but power rates are certainly a big part of a person's budget. So we want to make sure that they're being treated fairly through that process.
What do you make of the UARB's decision to grant a 2.5% rate increase to help Nova Scotia Power recoup some of those repair bills from storms?
Yeah, so I've been pretty vocal on my thoughts on some of the decisions made there, but they are an independent body, and we have to respect that. But we'll going forward put some some guardrails around that, as I say. But look, we have to get to a point where we're not always beholden. So we're generating more power, and I think there's big opportunities for us in hydro and green hydrogen and some of those green energy things. More wind is coming on the grid, and even with the tariff thing, when you look at Ontario saying, well, we'll just turn off the taps, stop sending energy to Ontario. And I said, well, how about we get that? Can we get that diverted here? But the transmission system, that's why we need those, west to east pipelines. And there's a lot more that Canada as a country can do, and I think we need to focus on that. But in the here and now, people are struggling. We recognize that, so we'll do what we can.
The province has that green energy plan. It's very ambitious to hit that 80% renewables by 2030. Yeah. Wind is a big part of that. Hasn't been a lot of movement on that. Is that still feasible to hit that mark?
We're actually greening the grid quite quickly. There is more wind coming on. Wind is always a topic of discussion. People have concerns about onshore wind for sure, but we have to work through that with them. Offshore wind has incredible potential, and we in Nova Scotia, we have incredible potential in offshore wind. The wind blows a lot, and it's strong, and it's untapped. So those are opportunities for us, but we're working towards greening the grid for sure. We know that there's potential there, but it is happening. It's happening maybe quicker than people think.
Premier Houston, I want to wish you and your family happy holidays, and thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, and Merry Christmas and happy holidays. Hope everyone's having a great holiday season for sure.
Thank you. We'll take a time out. We'll be back right after this.